Someone was like, what if you say something on your podcast that they are offended by? How could they be? Because they know exactly what I say. Like they know exactly what I'm speaking about because they've already met Christopher. So I don't have to, and that's the burden that gets released when you become yourself. So now I get what they were saying when I was a younger intern. But that's that burden that gets released because now I'm like, oh, I'm myself in all aspects of my life, so I don't have to hide. In fact, this summer, some of the partners were calling me the podcast guy because they started realize they knew that I had a podcast, and we started joking about it, and that became my networking and my connection aspect in my corporate life was through the podcast I had created. So where I'm authentically myself. And if one black person or brown person sees that connection and says like, oh, in all aspects of my life I can be me, I hope that they're able to do that and see that comfortably. So
All right, we are
Okay.
good.
Okay. So thank you guys. Thank you for watching the QFM podcast here. We got Gift and then we got our man.
We got Kenny J. How we all doing today?
And so we got a special
um,
guest. So just introduce yourself, man.
my name is Christopher, and yeah, excited to be here, have a conversation with you guys. So
Awesome.
So you got a pretty, interesting upbringing and also on why you're on the podcast. So just talk about your upbringing and, just talk about why you're here.
okay, sure. So yes, I was born in I was born in Virginia, but I grew up in El Paso, Texas, which is along the border with Mexico, and I ended up in North Carolina in 2020 to work with Department of Transportation. But that was during the pandemic, and so it was basically I got here probably about 7 days before the pandemic, and so I just made me sort of think about what I needed to do to really make sure that I had a sustainable career. And that's why I went back to school. And so that's when I went back to school to start studying accounting. And during my time in undergraduate at Wake Tech and then at UNCG, I just really noticed that there was just a lack of, I think, representation in the voices of the people I saw speaking about accounting, about jobs in accounting, about roles in accounting. And so that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to start my podcast was just to sort of provide a different perspective, a different background, also as a non-traditional, I guess people call it that, but as a non-traditional or older student, giving people also a visual representation that, life doesn't end when you're 30. So
And I think that's pretty good that you're saying that. So in that sense as well, I was going to say, just pertaining to the representation, do you think that a degree matters because you're going back to school? Do you think that that kind of sort of matters on having a degree at any time? Or like, how do you feel about just going for that in particularly?
so yeah, actually, um, I'm a admissions ambassador for my graduate
Mhm.
program now, and so this weekend we had a couple of students from different programs around the country come in to preview some of the graduate programs. And there's a question really about the necessity to get a master's degree in accounting now that some of the rules have changed to only require 120 credits in some instances instead of 150, and certainly within 5 years at the most. That will probably be nationwide. So there is a question if even the master's of accounting degree will be required. So that's the baseline. However, I was talking to a couple of minority students who were there, and I did an episode on this in the first season of my podcast about credentialism. And as a minority, I believe it's important to always have the strongest credentials, where especially if you're entering non-black spaces or non-brown spaces. And so, for example, a master's degree speaks before you enter the room. A lot of times, people, when they're looking at your resume, are looking for those types of bona fides. And the truth of the matter is that there are people who are in 5-year master's programs that they do all at one time, where they get a bachelor's and a master's degree. If you're going up against those same people in 4 or 5 years to look, to try to go for promotions or things like that, there are certainly still older people who make decisions based upon those types of credentials. So yes, I do believe that there are certain fields and certain situations where schooling and additional schooling is necessary. Um, but I also think that there's something interesting that's happening in the economy right now that people have to sort of be aware of. First of all, there's no white collar, blue collar war, right? There is no white versus blue collar, right? It's really that these jobs are for people who want them, not who are supposed to do them or who have to do them. For generations, sorry, for centuries, there have been people who have been mechanics and farmers because they love that stuff. They love working with their hands. They like that type of things. In fact, my mom was a mechanic in the military during the 90s. So um, I think that people have to find what works for them. So one thing that I think that high schools have failed to do is to provide students with the fullness of their options for after graduation. And so that includes technical schools, that includes no school, that includes medical school, it includes everything in between. It includes private schools, public schools, it includes community colleges. I got my associate's degree from Wake Tech and saved thousands of dollars instead of doing all 4 years at UNCG. So I think that it's a question of what works best for you and what are your goals. I mean, certainly for the future, there will be lots more highly paid, hands-on mechanic type roles because if Amazon is going to automate their entire warehouses, someone has to service those machines. I mean, that's just the truth. Um, so I think that people have to I think students, and it's hard because you're 18. So I understand that. But I think that you have to take a moment and think to yourself, like, what do you really want to do? And there's lots of different paths to get to what you want to do. And your life is your own life. Your life isn't a Hallmark movie. Your life isn't what the guidance counselor says it is. You have to figure out your own path. So my question is complicated, but I think that it matters. The person matters more than is school valuable. It's like, is school valuable to you? I don't know.
And that is so funny. That's so funny as well, just because, when I was in high school, there wasn't a lot of options. Like, people said high school, college. There was
Yeah.
no room to even think on where you should do or where you should go. Or it's okay if you don't have to go to college. Like, it's such a crazy phenomenon now that there was just so much pressure on getting a degree. But what do you do after? Like, what I do is not even pertaining to my degree. I asked them, I said, does my degree
Right.
matter? They said no. I'm like, wow, okay. So I just wasted 5 years to get this degree. And it has been, so it's just, do you feel like it, and KJ, feel free to include your piece, but also do you kind of feel as if, like, we value a lot of it just because of that social pressure? Or is it just something that we really need in that sense?
Well, so I'll say this. In my offer for the firm I'm working with after graduation, I mean, I need my master's. It's required. I could not do my job without my level of education. It's a technical accounting role. So basically, we're helping companies either smash together or pull apart. That's what M&A is. And in that world, those are highly regulated transactions, which require incredibly technical accounting and adjustments to be done that someone without that level of education couldn't do. So in that sense, that is not social pressure. That's just a requirement. The people
Yeah.
who are doing, you know, auditors have a role with the SEC that requires a level of understanding. However, what I think that we have lost the plot on a bit is the hmm, we've created this caste system. That's a good idea. A good way to put it. A caste system of universities. Like somehow your degree from Princeton in accounting is better than your degree from Utah Valley University or something. I don't know. That just came to my mind. Um, or from UC Berkeley or from UT El Paso. This idea that colleges have become like bidding wars for students and degrees rather than providing education. And I think that there's a lot of ways in which colleges have become businesses, more businesses first, and educational institutions second. And that's why people have become disillusioned with education because either their experience with it has been flawed, or they feel like it's not worth it. But again, I've always thought that there are levels to this, right? If you're going to be a surgeon, I think 100% of society believes you should go to college, right? If you're going to be a businessman, I think people are split. I think you'll see some businessmen who will say like, yeah, I like my MBA. It gave me a different perspective. And some people will say, I learned more running my business for 20 years than I learned, in that MBA class, and it was a waste of money. I think again, first of all, I think again, society loves to put people in boxes, and that's very simple for our brains as well. It's very simple for us to say like, yes, college is valuable. No, it is not valuable. That's very easy. That's it's There's so much in the middle there. I think for a lot of people, it's about being intentional about what are you doing with your life, and it's hard to do that because you're 20 something years old. But if you're intentional about what you're doing, then you could say like, yeah, I want to build skyscrapers. Yeah, but you might need a degree for that. I think so, right? You're like, you know what? I want to create a record label. Well, that's creative, right? You might start working at record shops, and you might start trying to get into clubs and understanding the business, right? So I think that life is much more diverse than I think we allow our kids to understand. And that's the bigger issue here. I mean, this could be a conversation more about the state version of our educational system, but I think that's for another time.
Yeah, and I think to even just like piggy off of that, I really like how you're saying how society does put us in boxes to where, oh, we might need a degree to, do certain things, or they like actually require it, like pretty much in your position. But I think it's also like, even if you do get those degree and credentials, I think for people, they need to acknowledge what you like actually do with it. So somebody might give you all the tools that you need to be successful, but you might not actually put it to use. So, and then you have like other people who will actually like get the tools that they need and actually like take it a long way and not take it for granted. So I think it's just all depends on like what do you actually do with the knowledge and the tools that you need to be successful.
Right, because nothing's guaranteed, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, a degree is a piece of paper. It's what you do with it. And there's a lot of people, for example, I'll just speak about my industry in accounting. When I first got in, there was a labor shortage. So basically, these guys were, getting multiple offers from the big firms and things like that. Um, but there was still a contingent of people who were not able to get hired, not getting the offers, not getting the opportunities. And that's, they're not doing the internships, they're not doing the career fairs, they're not doing what they have to do to take advantage of those opportunities. And I would say the flip side as well, excuse me, if you're going to skip college, I mean, that you're fighting against a societal norm. So that's going to be difficult. It's going to take a little bit of work and motivation to build whatever business you're looking to do. Your family probably is going to doubt you. Your friends might think like, hey, I mean, I got this degree, I have this comfortable job, like maybe you should be doing that. So I think either path has its pitfalls. But this is why I think that colleges, and again I'm sorry, high schools, and again they can't because the guidance counselor budgets have been cut. In public schools, some guidance counselors have 500 students that they're having to guide, which is impossible. And families are under economic pressure. Sometimes they're not able to think, sort of introspectively about these things. But if I was 18 or 19 or 20 years old right now, what I'd be thinking about is something I used to love. And stop me if I'm babbling here, but one of the things I used to like to do was the people that I admired the most. I'd go on their Wikipedia page and I would look at how they got there. I would look at what schools they attended, what their major was, the type of work they did, the type of firms they were at, because I wanted to be intentional with the decisions I was making. A lot of times people ask me like how I ended up at the firm or how I ended up at the team that I'm in, and I was like, I targeted that when I was in sophomore year. I knew exactly the timing. I knew exactly what city I wanted to be in, what team. And when I signed that offer in the summer, it felt like a validation of my intentional moves, right? Not like some fulfillment of a dream, right? It was like, no, I literally told myself step 1 to 8 is getting us there. And then we got to step 8. So I think in any role, right? Like you have to understand those pitfalls and then be intentional with your moves because if you're not, like the world will eat you up either way, whether you have a medical degree from John Hopkins or you're trying to start your own business, if you're not being intentional with your moves, you're going to get eaten up, and that's just the truth. So either way, like the world's not going to be guaranteed for you. It's not going to be sort of laid out for you, but that's kind of cool, right? I think that's kind of fun. Like I think one of the challenges of life is the fact that it is yours. Like that, I feel like it would kind of be boring. It's kind of like, again, stop me if I'm rambling. It's kind of like if your dad was famous and you were a movie star. Like, why would you want to be a movie star? That'd be boring because you know you'd probably be famous because this dude's famous. Like, wouldn't you want to chart your own path? Like, do something that's a little bit, challenging, scary, new. So I always think like, yeah, whether those either path is challenging or not, that should be fun, exciting, and motivating. And if it's not, then maybe you're not doing the right thing. Maybe if the challenges of your path are not motivating, not a little fun, then you might not actually be on the right path.
I'm sorry if I keep on muting, unmuting. I keep on pressing the button. I was gonna say, so now you're a CPA, right? Is that what you're currently going for? Like that's
Going
currently what
for,
you're
yeah.
going for. Okay.
Yeah.
What is a CPA and what made you want to get into that?
Sure. So yeah, a certified public accountant is a CPA is a certified public accountant. So you can be an accountant. I call myself an accountant. I worked for 2 years in tax. I have an accounting degree. I have experience in accounting. So I consider myself an accountant. But to be a certified public accountant, you have to do an exam, which basically has 4 sections. It's pretty hefty. It's pretty meaty. Um, I'm currently in the first semester of my graduate program. I'll start taking the test in the spring, and it's 4 tests. Well, first of all, it is that's a requirement of my role as well. So for my role at PwC, it's a requirement to be a CPA. Is that a requirement everywhere? It is not, right? It's again one of those credentials that I wanted to intentionally target because I know what I wanted to do with my career. But you can easily be an accountant without becoming a CPA. In fact, you can have a very comfortable career in accounting without becoming a CPA. I worked at a Fortune 500 pharmaceutical company and the senior accountants there were pushing 6 figures, mid 6 figures, not mid 6 figures, sorry, like 120, 130K, stock options, holidays. Uh, you know, that's a pretty nice living. They were not CPAs. They didn't have to be CPAs for that role. Just to get into management, you did. Um, so it's a credential that you can choose to have if you're looking for a certain career path. Certainly, I am. And again, because we're doing pretty technical accounting in the role that I'm going for, it is required. But for me, I'm always looking to do the highest and the best thing with my time. And it did make sense to do accounting, quite frankly, and not take that second step into CPA. But again, that's my path. There's a lot of people who take different paths in accounting, but it's basically like a lot of people don't know this as well. I used to sell real estate in Texas, and anyone who gets a real estate license can be call themselves an agent. You can only call yourself a realtor if you're like a member of the National Association of Realtors and you pay the dues and you do the additional tests and that stuff like that. So that gives you an extra level of credibility. And again, this sort of goes back to that episode on season 1 of my podcast about credentialism. That CPA is again a little bit of a shield to say, like, not only am I an accountant, not only did I go to, great programs, but I also did this additional thing, to prove that I could do the hard thing. and that I can be a CPA and that I have that level of trust. So it's just a natural progression, I think. But I think I think there's like maybe less than 1 million CPAs in America, and of that, probably 3, 4% are Black. And so for me, that's another thing where I'm like, okay, if that's the case, if that's really the truth, then I have to jump in and and bring some representation, as weird as that sounds. But that was definitely a motivation as well.
Do you go ahead? Were you about to say something, KJ?
No, as I was like gonna relate to that because I made a shift from the insurance world into the tech industry because there was more earning potential and opportunity. And same thing about even in the Black community for people who are in those like levels of hierarchy, it's very slim. I think it's like less than 5%. So that kind of gave me another initiative to get into the tech industry because not only is it earning potential, but I also wanted to show representation that people like us can make it in that level too.
Yeah, and I pulled out some stats right now, so I'm gonna be. It was like 650,000 CPAs, so not even 1 million
Uh,
CPAs, and of that, 2% are Black. So, I mean, when met with that type of statistic, like you said, it kind of is a motivating factor to be like, okay, hold on. I'm just, I'm just as equipped, just as smart, just as, able as, my other counterparts. Why are we not, in that field? And it's also one reason why I started doing a video component of my podcast because I did want to be my authentic Black self on my podcast as well to show, I wear my cap in my business school. My chain is always showing. I don't hide who I am, and I'm still going to one of the top firms in the industry doing, advisory work. So I don't have to not be myself, not be Black, not be who I am to be successful. And I think showing that is important. And also it's kind of energizing as well. My grandfather was the first Black chaplain of the VFW ever. And so for me, like seeing him step into that role to be sort of like a role model was something that motivated me to do the same thing.
And I think that's great that you're doing that for sure. And is that kind of one of the reasons why you have your channel? Is it to not only give representation of the career that you're pursuing, but also does it give representation of maybe like, just showing your Black authentic self? Is that one of the reasons as well?
Yeah, certainly. I'll say this is kind of funny, but like I remember being like an intern and going to these like intern events and they'd be like, bring your authentic self to the job. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. I'm not even sure what that means. And what I didn't realize, I wasn't being myself. That's why I didn't know what that meant. Because I was masking. I wasn't even dressing like myself. I was uncomfortable. I was sweaty. I was nervous. I was anxious. And I almost like didn't understand why. And that was because I was putting on a caricature of what I thought that they wanted me to be. It wasn't until really grad school that I started stepping into like my own self and being very comfortable. So that is one reason why I was doing that, because there's you know, sometimes there are younger students who will connect with me and they'll ask me questions about how to navigate being Black in corporate spaces. And I think they'll be surprised when I'm like, I'm, I, I don't care. Because I think that once you care is when it starts feeling a little sort of like burden, but like it becomes this sort of invisible burden that you start to carry. A lot of people don't care about that type of stuff, but if they do care about that type of stuff, it's their burden, right? So, and it's more complicated than that, but certainly navigating those types of spaces, being your authentic self is difficult. And so if one Black person watches my channel and they're like, oh, hey, look, Chris is being himself. Maybe I could be myself. Maybe I can feel comfortable. There's another guy in our program who we were dressing a certain way at the beginning of the program. We're in a business school, and we started seeing our peers in some short shorts and flip flops, the men. And we thought, okay, well, if y'all are gonna be you, we're gonna be us. And this is so, my peer wears his puffer jacket, he wears his chain, does himself. It's because there's no reason to hide because no one else is doing that. And that's why I say like it's an invisible burden that Black people put upon themselves because I will say like other people are not hiding who they are. They're not making a caricature. So there's no reason for me to come into a room and be like, should I not speak this way? I have called a manager bro before. I'm not gonna lie to you. I've done it. And you know why? Because in that same interview, that's how I spoke. That's what I said. In my interviews, I talked about how I loved NBA 2K. Me and the manager bonded over that because I was being my authentic self. In my graduate school interviews, I spoke like me. Someone was like, "What if you say something on your podcast that they are offended by?" How could they be? Because they know exactly what I say. Like they know exactly what I'm speaking about because they've already met Christopher. So I don't have to, and that's the burden that gets released when you become yourself. So now I get what they were saying when I was a younger intern. That's that burden that gets released because now I'm like, oh, I'm myself in all aspects of my life, so I don't have to hide. In fact, this summer, some of the partners were calling me the podcast guy because they started realize they knew that I had a podcast, and we started joking about it, and that became my networking and my connection aspect in my corporate life was through the podcast I had created. So where I'm authentically myself. And if one Black person or brown person sees that connection and says like, oh, in all aspects of my life I can be me, I hope that they're able to do that and see that comfortably. So
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Kenny J. I'm one half of the QFM Podcast. If you made it this far to the video, I just wanted to say welcome. While you're here, you might as well go ahead and hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and then on top of that, just go ahead and share it to a friend, family member, like grandmother or whatever. We want to get this channel to grow, and we have goals. So if you want to go ahead and support us with the channel, you might as well just help us out. It'll definitely go a long way. All right, y'all. Now back to the video.
And it's wild too, just because, I definitely relate to that in such a big way. So I lease apartments, and as I was getting with the training and things like that, and I remember, and he's not there anymore, but I remember him giving me words to say to make the tour seem as if, I sound professional or I sound smart. But I'm like, we're not meeting CEOs. We're like, and I completely disagree with it. I didn't really say anything, but and it showed because I got the most leases out of the year, right? So the work is shown, but it was never shown through me using big words, right? And I just remember when I was a kid, people using big words, I used to call it white words. He's using white person words, right? No, you could be yourself, but being yourself is just such a broad thing, and I think that not only we try to put bubbles into things that we're trying to get into, but as well as we sometimes try to match the stereotype of what they think a Black person is. And I think that is really great that you demonstrate that Black can be anything. It's not just this one particular thing, right? Or if my version of Black is good for me, why should you feel threatened by it? Why can you not accept that? And so with these tours, I'm honest with them. I let them know what's going on. And as a result, people are a lot more comfortable because you're already comfortable within yourself. So I'm glad that you have a podcast and you're able to do that. And you're like, hey, this is how I sound, but my work shows. So do you think that your work shows despite of how you talk or how you communicate?
um yeah, I mean, well, yeah, my resume is very
Yeah,
strong. I don't have
your
like
work
it's like
shows.
no. It's not even a question I've ever even contemplated, honestly. I've never
Right, right,
felt
right.
like it's like, and that might be just because, as a Black person, my grandfather always told me you have to work twice as hard to be half as good. And I've always worked four times as hard. So I've always been twice as, three times as good as everybody else. And that's
Yeah,
not
definitely.
bragging. That's just being like, I know myself. I'm a high achiever. I know that. That's why I am where I am in my life.
Hmm.
So that's never been something I thought about. But I do want to sort of piggyback on what you said. Sorry, Kendall, did you have something? Were you saying something?
No, no, I was just kind of like picking off of what you said about how your grandfather said, as a black person, you have to work twice as hard to even match your peers. And like that's so true because my grandfather, he's like an immigrant, came from Jamaica, and he had to work twice as hard to even just get recognized as, his other peers. And, it kind of got passed down to my father and then even into me, where it's like some people even ask, like, why do you take, certain things just so seriously? It's just, I just do it because I know that's what I have to do in order to get to where I want to be, whether it's like the podcast or, my job. Some people might say that, misery loves company. And you see people like doing certain things to make sure, like, oh, why are you doing too much? Like, you're not, you think like you're better than us. It's like, on one end I am because like I'm actually taking it serious and I want to like go somewhere. But then on the other end, it's like I know I have to do this because in order for me to get to that certain level, this is what I got to do.
Yeah, it's funny too because it's cultural, right? Because like
Yeah.
one of my peers in the program is she's East Asian, and she was asking some of the black students like, why do you guys have to push so hard? Why do you have to go so hard? And I was like, because it's generational. A lot of times when you meet a black person in a graduate program, we're the only person in our family who has ever reached that level. And so we have, the generations of, dreams and hopes and desires and hard work on our backs. And we've heard the stories of our grandparents and our aunts and our uncles and our moms and our dads and even our brothers and our cousins. And we carry that with us, knowing that the name sort of is our responsibility. So yeah, no, like I definitely and it's funny you brought that up because that conversation happened maybe it was literally Thursday. We were talking about that, and every black person around the table was saying like, yeah, like our families talk about how hard we have to work and how much we have to push, and like we're those people. And look, I'll be honest with you. If you stay in public accounting and for, 5, 6 years, you're making 250. That's life-changing money for people. That's insane. When you're exiting to roles that are like the money that our families didn't accumulate in their whole lives are what some of us will be able to make in 1 year. So like that's why some of us are working so hard because some people don't even have the perspective of what that means, of what it means because their parents, two income households, college educated, maybe they're both people here like, oh, both my parents are doctors. Insane. Insane. No frame of reference for that at all. So where I grew up, most people were teachers or nurses or they worked in the military. So it was pretty middle class for or lower middle class for everybody's upbringing. But yeah, I think it's very interesting to the last point I wanted to make was about the language thing because it's very interesting you said that because I'm light skinned and I have a large vocabulary. And so I always get when I was younger, I would always get accused of speaking white. There's been plenty times okay, I'm older than you all. I'm 36. So I do remember a time where you would call a workplace and you would ask for an interview and you would walk in with a resume. I don't know if you guys do, but I do. And there have been a few times where people were surprised I was black. So, and I know that's because of the way I speak. And people have made comments to my face about how quote articulate I am, when really all they're saying is, "Wow, a black person knows large words." So I think that's, you know, again about putting people in boxes and bubbles. And if you're a black person and you have large vocabulary or you don't have large vocabulary, it doesn't matter, right? Society is the one that makes you feel like you have to be a certain way in a certain space. I'll be quite honest with you. You know, people who are professionals in the South sound different than professionals in Texas, sound different than professionals in Illinois, sound different than professionals in New York. And that's what makes the wholeness of America and yourself like fun and interesting. Your accent, the way you say things, how you carry yourself, the way you dress, being yourself, like, you know, that is so important to your career. And I'll bring it back to my whole main sort of ethos of accounting and being sort of career prepared. Students should understand that the most important thing when you're getting these entry roles is if people like you. They assume they have a good degree. In accounting, you have to get a degree. You have to pass a CPA. If you do that, you're probably pretty good. You're probably pretty smart. You probably have good technical skills. That's table stakes. If you're not, if you're faking it, if you're putting on a mask, if you're burdened by this idea of trying to perform, you won't get far because people really want to like you, to work with you.
And
Excuse me.
it's funny that you say that too, just because, now just experiencing a lot of that, like, do you think that people, and this is just a short little thing, a short little last question. Um, do you think that people would have to do that anyways? Like, do you think that people do that anyways, despite of being themselves or not? Like being fake it to make it. Do you think that that still exists?
I mean, yeah, I'm building a media company and I'm faking it. I'm trying to build a startup. I'm faking it. I'm trying to, sometimes I'm in the graduate school and I'm like, I think this is what a graduate student does. I don't know. So yeah, I think people are faking it all the time, but I'm never faking being myself. I never, sir, or I've stopped creating a mask of myself for sure. I've stopped trying to be overly aware of the way I dress, the way I say things, because I know that when I enter a room that I belong in that room and if I'm fully myself, then I feel comfortable in that room. So belonging in the room and feeling comfortable in the room are two new things um, that I've been able to sort of craft as being in grad school. But I think, yeah, you're right. No, people are faking it all the time. And in a lot of ways, being black, they don't fake it enough. They think that sometimes the dream has to be earned. Sometimes the fantasy that you want has to be earned for some reason. And that's not true. There's a lot of people who are out here making companies off a whim because they think in 5 years they might make it work. But a lot of black people will say, like, should I do that? Do I have the credentials to do that? Will people judge me if I do that? Am I allowed to do that? Other people in our society aren't doing that. So yeah, it's a funny. You guys are very I don't know, you guys are bringing up points that are very, prescient in what I'm going through in life because as I'm building my media company, a lot of times I think to myself, like, should I be doing this? If people look at me and they're like, "Wow, look at this guy faking it." And then I'm like, yeah, yeah, I should be, because a lot of other people do that as well. So, yeah, I don't want to say that that's bad, but I will say, yeah, in the faking it until you make it, never lose sight of who you are, because that's probably going to help you make it. If you stay true to yourself and true to what brought you there in the first place. No, I just wanted to say thanks for the opportunity of thanks for the opportunity to come on here and talk to you guys about this. I know that you guys are going to be on my podcast coming up on the next episode. But yeah, no, my podcast is called That One Future CPA. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music now, YouTube, and we actually launched a couple different verticals. So next year we'll be making shows under some different titles. So yeah, I would love to, hopefully have you guys take a listen. And then yeah, excited to have you guys on the next episode to talk about housing. So I think that'll be interesting.
Housing. Okay. Nice, nice. And I guess like one of the questions that we didn't really get too much on the first part is that
Okay.
I guess like what would be like your end goal regarding like the podcast and even with school? Like where do you see yourself in like the later years of your life?
Yeah, no, so certainly in the last month or so, I've taken the podcast to a different level, I think, and trying to build more of a media brand around it. So creating different verticals and shows where I can talk about different things like, market bubbles or sports and finance, things like that. So at the end of this year, the idea is to arrive in Chicago next fall when I'm working full time and to have a library of content where I could start, monetizing it maybe or start thinking about how I want to expand it a bit further. I want to do live events under the media brand. I want to do interviews and stuff like that. So I think I just started doing the podcast, and then I thought, like, how far could I take this? and just sort of let my imagination run wild on that. For my career, I mean, and if that doesn't work, I'm still going to be a CPA. So my plan is to get my MBA from Wake in a couple years, and then uh, either stay at the big four firm until I become partner, or to become a CFO at a sports team. So I don't know. At the end of the day, though, when I came to North Carolina in 2020, if you told me that this is what I'd be doing 5 years later, I this was not part of my plan. Like it was not part of my plan to go back to school. I was supposed to come to North Carolina, do my job, get up move up in the company, become a general manager, and go somewhere else and start a project there. So absolutely in no shape or way was this part of my plan. So I could sit here and tell you that, and then if we talk in 5 years, I have no idea. So that's what I hope will happen, and that's what I'm being intentional about. And to be fair, if you're intentional about certain things, at least I know the path of what I'm looking for is trending towards success because that's what's most important to me.
Yeah, that's totally fair because I even say this like for within like the 5 years, it's been a lot that's been changing, and I didn't really expect myself to be in this position. Like you said, you're 36, right? 36.
Yeah, I just turned
Okay.
30. Yeah, I just turned 36.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm 24, so like there's definitely like a huge gap in between us. And even just like 5 years ago, when I was like 19, I was just like starting my freshman year at like in college. So it's just like a huge different jump between like what I was expecting to do and then like even like seeing myself now. But honestly, like this might be cliche, but if you could like do it all over again, what would kind of like tell your past self to I guess do better or maybe not change anything?
Um, I don't know. Uh, Probably I don't think I would tell myself anything. That's cheating. Myself should have to go
Mm,
through all the heartache I had to go through. But no, I think I've learned like lessons through every step of the way. What I would probably do differently is I probably wouldn't be so stressed. I
mm,
certainly because I'm a high achiever, I have high expectations of myself and high standards, and sometimes I can overdo that. And there have been times during the last 5 years as I've been going through school and trying to finish that my high standards and expectations for myself have, made me suffer when I shouldn't have to, whether that's my health or pushing too hard or not getting enough rest or something like that. Even now, you know, I could probably do better in balancing expectations versus reality of what I could actually get accomplished and what I need to actually get accomplished versus what I want to get accomplished, you know, um, which sounds weird, but I just think there's a lot of type A personalities out there who are like me, I know, who push themselves to be as successful as possible, especially if you're black, especially if you're male, especially if you're educated, that you're one of the only people out there. I mean, bachelor's degrees in general, that's only like 38% of people have bachelor's degrees in the country. So if you're an educated black man, you're already in sort of a bit of uncharted territory, excuse me. So yeah, I think balancing those expectations, learning when to rest, learning when to push, learning when you don't have to is probably something I would tell myself, but I certainly wouldn't change anything because I feel like, God and my family have ordered my steps through the last 5 years. And I mean, I'm very happy of every twist and turn that's happened because definitely learned something along the way. So
yeah, that's nice, man. I definitely relate to that. If you have any last things?
No, I'm just like intrigued about everything and just the fact of like you promote things that is already not a norm. Just because like, just the generational pursuits and as well as just, chasing your goals. Like, do you chase the goal by being something that you're not, but you're getting there? Or also do you just chase the goals by being yourself because with a lot of, the pressure and just being a high overachiever, I was never stressed about where I wanted to go. Like I was never stressed about where I was going to go in 10 years or 20 years because I knew it was going to happen eventually. Just as long as you have the mindset, you can get anywhere. You can get anywhere. There's not going to be really anything that's going to really stand in your way to get to that goal. And just seeing your podcast and just how vocal you are, that inspires me to be better, not only with chasing my goals, but being myself while trying to pursue them.
Yeah, I think, and that's the one thing that I think I can really close on there is that, yeah, I this might sound like a bit of a brag, but yeah, I never questioned success. That's really never been like out of the equation for me. Um, if I put my mind to it, I do it, I achieve it. Next. But a lot of those times I was not doing it as my full self. I wasn't doing the things I wanted to be doing. And the things I wanted to be doing, I wasn't doing them the way I wanted to be doing. I wasn't showing up the way I wanted to show up. And God, I hate using that language because I remember hearing this language in an HR fashion and being like, ooh, but it's true. Like when you're not your full self and you show up as this caricature, it's actually very stressful to keep it up and try to be in the space. And then you're like, oh, wait, my mask is almost falling off, trying to put it back on. So, yeah, no, I think that if you're pursuing the things that you love to do and you're being yourself doing it and you're working hard at it, then, maybe success is not guaranteed, but enjoyment of life is. And I feel like in a lot of ways, for a lot of people, when they're doing something they love, that's what they want. Maybe I mean, people don't really watch a lot of some of my stuff. One of my episodes got 2 views. But that was one of my favorite episodes to do, so I don't care. Someday someone will watch it and I think they'll like it. So it's like I'm building something bigger than like viral moments, right? I'm building, sort of a portfolio of a thought leadership. And so for me, like I love doing that. So I don't get bogged down in the metrics. Now, I want them higher, but like for me, the love of the game, like trying to build it is more exciting. So I don't get bogged down with like, oh, am I going viral, stuff like that. So
Does that conclude everything, KJ? Do you have anything else before we conclude?
No, I think I'm good on my end. I really thought this is like something different that we did. You brought like a very valid perspective that, most of our guests, I wouldn't say like they didn't have, a good take on some things, but I think you come from a very inquisitive mindset to where I think it brings valid perspectives from a different aspect and lens.
yeah, I really enjoyed it. I have never spoken on anyone else's podcast, so this is the first for me, so it's kind of fun. Definitely enjoy, speaking on subjects that are a little bit different than my lane. My lane's mostly financial, but still sort of plays in the same space about, why these systems exist and, what are our places in them. So yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation.
Okay, well, thank you for showing up, and we will be on your podcast pretty soon. Thank you guys for listening to QFM Podcast. Please listen to us on YouTube, look at our page on Instagram, and as well as if you want to relax and just chill and listen, look on us on Anchor, okay? You have a great day, and see you guys later.
It's out you.